the differences between raising critical consciousness and raising awareness. I think that there is a big difference between the two. I think that raising critical consciousness has a lot to do with questioning our biases and ourselves, and reflecting on the ways in which we oppress other people, and or have also been oppressed. I think that it involves becoming more and more aware of our privileges and the benefits that we have in our lives and how that affects other people. But beyond just becoming aware of these things, I think that one of the biggest differences between raising critical consciousness and raising awareness is actually taking the step to do something about it, to change the things that you do, or to partner with others. And I think this is a big thing because I think nowadays with social media and the availability of the internet and how easily people can be connected to other people around the world, we tend to focus a lot on raising awareness through things like the ALS challenge or whatever BuzzFeed article, things like that. People become more aware of these things, but they don't actually do anything about it. They either put the ice over their head and they're like, oh yeah, I'm raising awareness for ALS or things like that. But honestly, I didn't even really know what ALS was. And so I bring up that point to say that just because you're raising awareness about an issue doesn't actually mean that anything is actually happens. There's not necessarily change. It doesn't necessarily cause you to challenge the things that you feel and the things that you believe in the way that you have either directly or indirectly taken part in the oppression of another person, or the way that you have maybe directly or indirectly benefited from somebody else's struggle or things of that nature. It doesn't actually challenge you to change. There's no challenge to change. And also, I think that another major difference is that I feel as if learn. You don't actually learn as much as you think you do, and it can give you the false impression that you understand something that you don't actually understand. I think that from Edge and from looking at the videos and reading the articles, one of the main things that I want to do in the short term is really evaluate myself and evaluate the ways in which I have become someone who has privilege off of the disadvantages of other people, and just just to really evaluate the ways that I think and the way that I feel about others, and maybe even some of the ways that things that people have done have affected me. I think in the short term, I would really like to take a role of reflection, and then in the long term, I think that raising critical consciousness and the things I'm learning, I would like to take on the role of someone who becomes a better global citizen in the sense of I can actually actively do things about things that are happening to me or the things I'm doing to others. Um, I think that until people get that awareness, and until people actually own and accept their role, either as someone who's oppressed others or someone who is oppressed or someone who is um, almost in dual roles. Because one of the things I found really interesting from some of his works, and also bringing in some of the things I've learned from some of my other education classes, is that there's not always really clear cut roles. There's not always necessarily, it's not always clear cut, as in the sense of this group of people are people that are oppressed. This group of people are people um, that oppress others. These people benefit and these people don't, because in reality, it's really much more fluid, I feel. And as someone as an African American in the USA, with all the race and ethnicity and culture issues that go on in the US, and different things I've experienced, I think that it's been really easy for me to see myself as someone who is oppressed by others, as someone who has as someone who has been on the shorthand stick of some things. But then again, I also, when I think about the world at large, um, I also see myself as someone who has, in a sense, oppressed others. I see myself as someone who has a lot of privileges. I see myself as someone who has benefited from other people's labors. So it's kind of interesting for me to think about. So something kind of interesting for me to think about. I think that one of the first times where I was really challenged to think about the reasons why society is the way it is and the things that happen. Whereas when I was in college, and I think it was sophomore year, I took a class called the sociology of jobs and work. I honestly just signed up for it randomly, but when I took the class, it was really interesting to me because I hadn't really thought about. I really thought about a lot of things, the reason why things are the way they are. For instance, like we learned about, why women, why is it that women make less than men in the workforce? Why is it that, people have this image of, a housewife as someone who doesn't work? Which, was something I didn't really think about a lot. Why we have those views, um, why we view women in certain ways, or other groups, or even we learned about like why is there the number of African American Latinos in prison? What is this war on drugs? Or or do we how do we make it so that prisoners end up back in jail with them not being able to vote and not being able to have a voice and having high penalties for certain types of crimes that maybe are not as serious as other ones. And so that's just kind of a general overview. But the reason why I say that that raised a lot of my critical consciousness is because from there, I began to understand um, why certain things were happening to me, what role I played in even putting other people at a disadvantage. So I think that was one of the first times. I think that was an important for me because and I really appreciate the teacher that I had because I think that the class didn't teach me how to think, but it taught, didn't teach me what to think, but it taught me a lot on how I can think about issues that happen in the world and not to just take everything at face value and to really evaluate the things that I hear and the images that I see and the things that are happening in the world.